right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. So we are quickly approaching the Christmas holidays, but we still have some great events coming up in the next week and a half or so. So if you head over to exploringbytheseat.com, you can see what's still coming up and jump in with your classrooms. So this month, we've been focusing on big cats. So we do this every December. It's always a lot of fun connecting with scientists, explorers, and conservationists from places like South America, Central America, Africa, India, North America, and more. So we're really excited for today's event. Today, we are going to focus on the tigers, which we haven't done in our events so far this month. So Sugoto Roy is joining us today. He is a conservation biologist and has worked on carnivore ecology since the mid-1990s. So his work has involved managing invasive species, human-wildlife conflict, as well as conservation. So since 2014, he has been managing the IUCN's Tiger Program, funded by the German Ministry for Cooperation, and he currently has 12 projects in 6 countries on the go. So all of these projects focus on conserving the landscape, making sure that local communities' needs are being met, and managing the habitat properly. So I'm going to bring Sugoto in with us now. He is joining us live in Geneva in Switzerland. Hey, Sugoto, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks. And thanks for having me on.
Okay, of course. Yeah, always a pleasure to host you. We've got classrooms joining us live via YouTube and as well live on camera with us from Canada and the US. So they're excited to learn a little bit more about the work you're doing. And then, of course, they're going to have lots of questions for you.
Okay, I can't wait.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit, and we'll see you soon for some Q&A action.
Okay, so my name is Sugoto Roy. I run IUCN's Tiger Program. So IUCN is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It is a global network of different conservation organizations coming together. And basically, we run a series of different conservation programs, but also we have a water program, a forest restoration program. It's quite a big organization that does a lot of different types of activities. So I was lucky enough to start working in the Tiger Program when it started. So if I can I click? Okay, there we go. So one of the things that I'm just going to really briefly go into this. IUCN is famous for running something called the Red List. So every time you Google a species or something like that, you know, somebody tells you the name of a very strange species of animal or whatever, a lot of people will just go straight to Google, and the first thing that comes up is its status. Is it endangered? Is it critically endangered? Is it vulnerable? That's from something called the Red List, which is basically an assessment carried out by an expert or a group of experts. IUCN currently has access to 10,000 species experts around the world. So people who are in universities or who have spent their life studying elephants or whatever it might be. And basically this gives us an idea of how well species are doing. We have maps, we have where the species actually occur. It's quite scientifically strong information. It's not just something that somebody's made up, it's actual research. And it helps us make global decisions. So it helps countries to establish things like national parks. But this Red List is quite a big product that IUCN creates and keeps alive. And this is the kind of things we do. So we can see that on the bottom of this graph, it's the time from 1980 to 2010, 2012, just to give you an idea. And we can use these species assessments, even in a very big, broad way, to look at how well we're doing in terms of conservation. So, for example, coral species are not doing particularly well. They've all declined a lot. Birds and mammals have all declined, not as quickly, but still they're declining, which is bad. And amphibians, things like frogs and toads, they're all declining as well. So we're not doing particularly well in terms of conservation. And then it helps us make decisions. And don't worry too much about this graph, but basically it says that in order to protect species, we need to protect large amounts of habitat, at least 50% in order to protect 80% of species that currently are alive on the planet today. So let me focus a little bit on tigers. Tigers have had some serious population crashes. In 1970, so I was born in 1971, so just before I was born, there were 40,000 tigers alive on the planet. And even in my lifetime, that crashed to below about 2,000 or 3,000. So that's a huge loss of one species from much of its range. In 2010, which was actually the Chinese Year of the Tiger, what was called T times 2, or the Global Tiger Recovery Program, was established. All the countries where tigers exist, and there are 13 countries where they do exist, or did exist at that time, got together and said, this is ridiculous, we've got to do something about this. So these big species assessments helped us decide where to work, where to prioritize our actions, and actually try and double tiger populations. That was the aim. The next Year of the Tiger is in 2022, and all the countries will hopefully get together again and say, how are we doing? What can we do next? This map shows you where tigers actually are. The dark green areas are where tigers currently exist. The light green areas are where they could be. So there's lots of empty landscapes where we could still cause tigers to recover and grow. And one of the things that are actually limiting their factors, apart from poaching and habitat loss, is the abundance of prey. I'm going to show you, if it works, a very brief video clip. This is something called a gaur. It's a very ancient species of wild cattle that is found in Asia. And there are people talking, so let me shut them up. And basically, a tiger can eat the equivalent of one of these every week in order to survive. That's what it needs. The equivalent of a cow or something of this size. And prey species across much of tiger habitats have been lost. People have been hunting them, and tigers simply don't have enough to eat. So tigers need a lot of food. So my project was set up, my program. It was funded by the German government. It was initially a 5-year program. It began in 2014, but phase 2, a second phase and second 5-year period is beginning now. We're actually in the process of signing a third phase as we speak. And we are currently designing a 4th phase. So it's a long-term project. This is not the kind of thing you can do overnight. And I currently have 12 projects in 6 countries. So in India, we've got 2 projects. We've got 2 projects on the India-Nepal border. We have a project on the India-Bangladesh border. We've got a project, 2 projects across India and Bhutan there, 1 across India and Myanmar or Burma, another 2 in Myanmar or Burma, however you want to call it. I've got 2 in Indonesia here in Sumatra. These are all big projects. And why tigers? Why are we focusing on tigers? Well, first of all, it's the largest of the big cats. In some areas, weights of 300 kilograms, that's huge in terms of weight, has been recorded. It's quite big. All tigers love water. I'll just put this video on. Tigers literally exist in areas around water. They're not found in any dry areas like lions can, for example. They're not found in any dry mountainous areas. They need access to water, and they need a lot of space in order to find prey. Mainly, they need to have, like I said, a cow a week. Don't worry too much about this, but people have been arguing about which tiger belongs to which subspecies and if it's an actual subspecies or not. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, we now say that there are 2 subspecies, what they call the mainland tiger, that stretches all the way from India through to Russia. Yes, they look a bit different in some places, but they're still the same subspecies. And then what they call the island tigers, which is Java and Sumatra and Bali. Java and Bali tigers are extinct. What are the main causes of tigers vanishing? Well, land clearance is a big one. This is a place in Myanmar which used to be pristine forest, and it's needed to connect one forest patch to another, but people are growing palm oil, rubber, Also, where forest does exist, people graze cattle and sheep, goats. So there's not enough food. As a result, there's not enough prey. And as a result, there isn't enough tigers. Poaching is a real issue. This is another video I will show you. This mostly by snares. People can go and catch tigers. Some people can pre-order tigers. And why do they want to pre-order tigers? Basically, you find a tiger, you put a snare up, and you can then sell the tiger for a lot of money. In traditional Chinese medicines, tiger parts are used. They don't work, but they're still very expensive, and they're used supposedly to cure all kinds of diseases and ailments and illnesses. So if you see, this is a snare. Let me just speed it up a little bit. And it's very indiscriminate. It's a little piece of wire on the ground, and basically an animal, whether it's a tiger, leopard, whatever it is, walks past, and boom, it's caught like that. And it's sometimes days before people go and check their traps again. So it takes a while for the animal to die very slowly. People get killed by tigers. Tigers are dangerous. Tigers kill livestock, like I said, 1 cow a week. And people, as a result, kill tigers in response. A cow is a very precious thing to a very poor farmer in Asia. So they don't want tigers to kill their cows, so they kill tigers in return. Like I said, often by snaring like this. But also they catch other species like leopards. I think you've had some leopard talks already. Leopards and tigers often live side by side, but leopards hide a lot better than tigers do. So they often come into conflict with people as well. So people have a big conflict with these two species wherever they occur. Zoonoses, or wildlife diseases. It can't have escaped your attention that we have a problem with wildlife diseases at the moment, like the coronavirus. But wildlife diseases are all around us, and where people have got their cows and things in forest environments, there they are catching and giving diseases to wild deer and vice versa. So a lot of wild animals die as a result of cattle diseases and vice versa. So as I said, in Russia in 2010, the Tiger Recovery Program was set up. And I'm funded by the German Development Bank to run my projects. And as I travel around Asia, sometimes with people from the German Development Bank, it's great because German people are often very, very tall and people in Asia are not. So everyone stands out from very far away. And basically, it's amazing to see so many different groups of people working together from across Asia, from across Europe. We have experts from the United States, all advising us and visiting our projects. We set up projects slowly. So in the beginning, we give out small grants, and then we work with local people because we have to work with local communities wherever we are. We set up local partnerships, making sure that everyone knows exactly what they're doing as part of their responsibilities in any project that we have. And we have a lot of partners in our projects helping in different aspects, like camera trapping, training people on how to find those snares that I just showed you in a video, that kind of thing. And we have what's called an environmental and social management system, where we have to work with local communities to make sure that we're not actually working against their wishes or their needs. Local people still need to live, to survive, to find food, to have wood. So if we are saying, look, this is an important area for tigers, we can't just say stop cutting wood. We have to provide alternatives. So all of our projects have this in common. We work with species protection, we work with habitat protection, and we work with local communities. And these are our projects, as I showed you before, with the yellow dots on the map. But this is a typical project that we have. These orange areas are national parks, and these are all connected by thin strands of forests that are critical for tigers to move from one place to another. And the kind of things that we do, we set up, as I said, alternative fuel, so people are not relying on wood. We set up response teams. If a tiger goes into a farm or a village, instead of people trying to scare it away, we have actual trained response teams that know how to deal with animals in such situations rather than local people getting attacked. We set up farms in back gardens so people don't have to go and hunt anymore. They can go and they can go and grow their own meat and food. And we train people on how to set up things like camera trapping and mapping. And we set up ecotourism. So these two ladies in the bottom of the screen are managing a national tourism scheme. We have a mixture of small projects and big projects. Both of them have their positives and negatives, but all these projects, they have to be sustainable. Even when the project money runs out in 5 years' time or whatever, we can't just stop our activities. We have to make sure that these things continue in the long term. A lot of our projects are transboundary. They are, as I said, between the Nepal-India border or Nepal-Bhutan border. So we have to work with lots of different government agencies and national parks departments, which makes things a little bit complicated. We have a lot of activities. Don't try and read this, but we have a lot of different activities. From the species protection, we do things like anti-poaching and population monitoring and things like that, all the way through to the human activities. We set up things like ecotourism and education centers, teach people about vaccinating their cattle, things like that. And some of these things are going okay. Some of these things are a bit slow to start. But all in all, we have to keep visiting our projects all the time and work with a large number of people. This is a road sign that literally has one purpose. It's to slow traffic so that people drive slowly and don't hit wildlife. This is one of our stoves that help people not use too much wood. And we also have a lot of meetings, discussions, a lot of scientists come and turn up. This is John Goodrich from the United States. He's an international tiger expert. We have a lot of different people advising us on our projects all the time. And conversations are very interesting, a lot to learn all the time. We have another project in high altitude areas in Bhutan. Tigers are moving increasingly higher and higher up, away from lowland areas, which are continuously flooded now because of climate change. And we also had a study on human-wildlife conflicts in India here. So we've got a huge community of people all working together, working on these three things: people, habitats, species, and basically building this entire program and learning together. So I'm going to leave you with one thing, and that's this. This is where all of the people, all of the tigers in the world are found in this circle. And also in this circle, there are more people in the circle than outside of the circle. So we have to work with local communities. We have to work with people and tigers living closer and closer together. So that species, habitats, people model, it works for everything. It works for lions, it works for elephants, it works for crocodiles, but it's very important to keep all three of those elements working together. And I think that's the end of my actual presentation aspect.
All right. So I love that last image. That really puts things into perspective. You know, that circle where you find the tiger population and billions of people who are trying to coexist in that area. That was a great image to kind of sum things up. And great work that you're doing around the world. What a steep decline, but it's good to see that there is, you know, potentially hope and some increase on the horizon.
Yeah. Shall I stop sharing my screen or?
Sure, go ahead. I have you up on the screen, but there we go. Perfect.
Okay.
So classrooms joining us live via YouTube. Use that chat to send us in some questions. And then let's bring in some of our live groups and let's get some questions about tigers and tiger conservation. So let's see here. I see hands up already in Mrs. Mills' class, so I can't resist. Let's start there. Hey, Miss Mills crew, how you doing?
Well, it's a big debate. We've got lots of questions, but I think one of them is how fast can they run?
All right. So Sugoto, are they fast runners or do they rely more on stealth, the tiger?
Okay, so they're faster than us, that's for sure. But over very short distances, it's quite an explosive amount of speed, but they can't maintain that. Tigers are very heavy. They rely on being heavy because basically what they do, they hide in the grass, or which is why they're striped. And as soon as something comes within a short distance, they suddenly jump forward and grasp whatever the animal is. And if it's something like that's very big, like that big cattle I showed you, they rely on their weight to actually pull that animal down and then kill it quite quickly. Then they're not like cheetahs or wolves that rely on running long distances over long periods of time. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, they are fast over very short distances.
All right, very cool. Let's grab a question here via YouTube. So speaking of those cattle, Mr. Parker's class would like to know, how heavy is one of those big cows that you showed up?
Oh, one of the really big ones can be up to a ton, 1,000 kilograms, 800 kilograms plus.
Wow, that is huge. Very cool. Let's see here. Mr. Marwick's grade 4s, I believe they're hanging out with us in Sudbury, Ontario. How are we doing today, Mr. Marwick?
He's muted.
I'm good. I'm great. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I think one of my students said, Cooper, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. How many pounds does a tiger eat a day?
Okay, so I said that they need the equivalent of one of those cattle every week, or a big deer every week. And they will literally kill a deer and hold on to that for as long as they can. And at some point that will smell and it'll be rotting, but they will eat continuously. Not, they'll sit with the prey, they will be close to that prey, they'll be never more than about 100 meters away from that thing that they've just killed. And they will defend it from other things like jackals and foxes that try and steal their prey. So how many times a day? They'll eat as many times as they can while it's fresh. And there may then be days and days when they don't eat for a while. So it depends on how successful they are hunting in the next time that they hunt. But they can eat a huge amount of meat in one sitting and then not eat again for several days.
All right, we've got a ton of questions coming in from classes via YouTube. So in Mr. Shattuck's class, we have Morgan, and Morgan would like to know, what are the cubs doing while the tiger's hunting?
So in the very beginning, they've been left in a cave or in a hole somewhere in the ground or under a tree root when they're very young. When they're really, really young, they rely on drinking the mother's milk, and the mother doesn't actually hunt very much. So she can't leave her cubs abandoned. So she may actually go hungry for quite a while. Then she'll go out to hunt and leave the cubs behind. And at some point, this is a very dangerous time for the cubs, and leopards and things may, for example, find these cubs and kill them. That's quite common, but not always. A female tiger might have 3-4 cubs, sometimes more, but very rarely. But two or one of them may survive to adulthood. Then after some months, they'll follow the mother during the hunt and actually learn how to hunt. They become, in the early stages, they're actually quite bad to have around because they spoil the hunting, because they don't hide patiently for long enough. They make a lot of noise and that kind of thing. But after a while, they get better and better at hunting. They watch the mother. When they get bigger and bigger, they may even join in for some of the hunts. But then eventually they'll go off on their own after about a year and a half, maybe a little bit earlier than that, and do their own hunting. And in the beginning, they'll be quite unsuccessful. They'll catch smaller things. They won't be that skillful, but eventually they get more and more skillful as hunters, and then they'll be able to catch the bigger things. So within a year or a year and a half, up to 2 years, they'll always be close to their mother, but then they'll learn to hunt on their own.
All right, great question. Mrs. Phelps, grade 4s are hanging out with us virtually. Let me bring her into the call. Hey, Mrs. Phelps, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good stuff. Well, I can see from the chat there's a couple questions, so go ahead.
Okay, so go ahead, Hope, ask your question.
It didn't come through, Mrs. Phelps. Do you want to relay it to us?
Yes, she was wondering if global warming is doing anything to the animals' health.
Okay, so this global warming has a lot of consequences. So first of all, it makes some places incredibly dry, and as I said before, tigers need water. So it may make some habitat areas inaccessible or unusable. It'll also reduce the number of prey species that are available. Secondly, it'll make some places flood. As a result of global warming or climate change, there'll be more unpredictable rain, or the monsoons will be stronger, or there'll be big storms and floods. And areas that used to be sensible places for tigers to live are no longer sensible places for tigers to live. Tigers and people will have less reliable land to use, and they'll be in more competition. So they'll be competing for the same space. People want to do some farming or grow cattle in the only last remaining unflooded areas, and tigers will need food and forests, and there'll be competition that way. And what we have also found increasingly over the last few years is tigers are using high altitudes more and more. They're going higher up because the lower down areas are more flooded. We actually did a study on this ourselves, and we found that they're using these higher up places more and more frequently. It's still rare, but they're going to do it more and more. And basically, they will be competing with other species in high altitudes, like snow leopards, perhaps. The people who live in high altitudes will have to cope with having tigers increasingly in their environment as a predator of their yaks and their cattle and sheep and things like that. So it changes the dynamics. It changes the way species live and where they can live. Direct consequences of health. Animals always move to places where they can survive in order not to have health issues, in the same way that humans do. If you're feeling cold, you go inside or you put a jumper on. But okay, tigers don't have jumpers, but yeah, if you're feeling cold, you go inside. If you're feeling hot, you open a window. Tigers adapt behaviorally to the way climate changes, but we have to give them the chance to adapt.
All right, great question. I'm going to bring in Mr. Dunn here with his class. How are you doing today, Mr. Dunn, with your crew?
Great, thank you. Jacob and Elaine had a question for you. They want to know, how long do tigers live in the natural environment?
Okay, so this is a very difficult question. Animals in the wild don't live as long as they do in the zoo. So a tiger, for example, has to, once it reaches adulthood, if it reaches adulthood, not all of them do, has to maintain a territory and find prey, has to hunt, has to remain healthy enough to hunt, but hunting is almost like fighting. I mean, you've seen the size of one of these cattle. Trying to catch one of those, there is a chance you'll be injured at some point. So you're fighting with other tigers for territory and competing with them. You're fighting with, in essence, you're hunting prey, which is dangerous to you. If you can survive all of that and maintain your territory, 10 years maximum, 10 to 15 years, but it's a rare occurrence. It's up to about 10 years, I would say, if you survive to adulthood and can maintain your territories and stuff. Sometimes you see old tigers that have lost an eye or has lost an ear in a fight or something like that. They still manage to survive. They don't particularly live healthy lives. Sometimes they're on the edges of the forest. They're in the poorer quality forest because that's the only thing they can manage to defend from other tigers. So it's ups and downs, but it depends on how tough the life is for the tiger, is the answer to your question.
Okay, another great question. Let's grab one on YouTube here. I like this one. A few classrooms are asking about their stripes. So, we can kind of roll a couple questions in here. They're wondering, is there kind of an average number, or is it more like a fingerprint where you can kind of identify different tigers from their pattern?
It's like a fingerprint. That's exactly the perfect description. individual tigers have individual stripe patterns that remain the same throughout their life, which is why camera trapping works, because basically you stick a camera on a tree and a tiger walks past and you get a picture of that animal. You know if it's John or Fred or whatever the tiger is, you know the individual animal. And as a result of being able to identify individual animals, you can get very clear population estimates. And this is the case for most animals that are marked in this kind of way. So tiger stripes, jaguar spots, leopard spots, they're all individualized. And you can definitely identify individuals and then get very accurate population guesses and counts from doing that.
All right, great. I'm going to bring Mrs. Tibriel in. So Mrs. Tibriel, looks like the mic is up and running. We'd love to grab a question.
Yes, my class have a couple of questions. Let's go, Serenity. What question do you have, Serenity? You can speak. How old is the tiger? Usually, he already answered that part. He usually survives for 10 to 15. I have one more question, just one friend. Archer wants to know, do they survive in winter?
Yes. Actually, historically, in evolutionary times, a long time ago, tigers are cold weather species. If you look at places like the Russian Far East, tigers are very used to living in that kind of environment. That's actually where they're used to living in very cold, snowy environments. And some of the different tiger subspecies, which are now extinct, the Caspian tiger, for example, also lived in very cold climates. So that's what they're actually adapted for, which is why tigers need to be close to water, because it helps them to cool down. So if you go to places like India, where it's very hot in the summertime, it'll be 45, 50 degrees centigrade in some places where tigers live. You will never find them far from water, because they spend vast amounts of time just sitting in pools and stuff to stay cool.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Miss Clark's group. They're joining us from Markham. How are we doing today, Mrs. Clark? If you can hear me, Mrs. Clark.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this presentation. My class does have a few questions. I told them I would try to let them ask themselves. So could you give me 1 second?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, the first person in the chat, go ahead. I believe it was Mohammed. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question? You can unmute your mic. Can you hear him?
I can. I think your speaker's canceling it on us.
Oh, okay. All right. He wanted to know, why do tigers usually live up in mountains? And can I add a second question to it?
Sure.
It's just in regards to whether or not they're extinct. You might have answered it already. We joined a little bit late.
Okay, so first, they do live up in mountains, but not always. Actually, they prefer lowland areas. Lowland areas that are well forested and have some grassland areas mixed in with that, because those areas have more prey species. So they actually prefer lowland areas. They go to up mountain sides and things like that sometimes, because the lowland areas, the space is taken up by people, farming and things like that. Are tigers extinct? No, thank God. But they're not doing that well compared to how they were doing in the 1950s to the 1970s. There were a lot of tigers in the beginning of the last century, and there are very few now. They're now down to 6% of the area that they used to cover across the world. And there used to be tigers in places like all the way up to Turkey, Iran. These tigers are extinct. So in some countries, tigers are extinct. In South Korea, for example, tigers are extinct. So in parts of their range, they are functionally extinct. In places like Vietnam, Cambodia, a country called Laos or Lao PDR, People's Democratic Republic, tigers used to exist until very recently. And then in 2010 or 2012, there was no more information about any tigers existing in these three countries. So they are slowly becoming extinct in past of their range.
Okay, there we go. Everything froze on my end for a second, but it looks like we're good. So a popular question in the YouTube chat is about, when you see that form of Siberian tiger that's white, is that pretty rare in the wild?
White tigers are literally just a skin pigmentation genetic thing. There's no real thing called a white tiger. There's no species or subspecies or tigers that are white in that sense of the word. It's basically a skin aberration or a mutation of genes. So even what we would call normally colored tigers, they may sometimes give birth to what we would call white tigers if the genetic combination is right. Siberian tigers are normally colored. They might be a little bit paler because they live in very snowy environments.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's squeeze a few more questions in before we wrap today. So we'll check in with Miss Mills' crew and see if they have another question for us. I see hands, so it looks like they do.
Oh, we always have questions. We're also wondering, when tigers get caught by people, are there fines, or do people try to keep them as pets? Are there consequences if someone catches them?
Yeah. Yes. So it's illegal to catch a tiger. In all countries in the wild, it's illegal to catch a tiger. There should be fines or imprisonment. If they kill a tiger, definitely there'll be fines and imprisonment as well. All tiger range countries have some kind of legal protection for tigers in that way. If you're caught trading a tiger, so people sometimes catch them as cubs or whatever and try and trade them alive as pets or whatever, that's illegal as well, and you'll be fined or maybe even put in prison. If you have tiger parts or bones or skin or tiger skulls or teeth, whatever, for whatever purpose, Chinese medicines and things like that, then you will also be fined if you're caught with that. Joe, you're muted.
There we go. Mr. Markwick's crew.
I was actually wondering about the gar population. That's cow, right?
Sorry, yeah, they are perhaps the biggest thing a tiger would normally catch, and it wouldn't be a very common occurrence. The normal size prey range of a tiger that it would prefer to catch is something like a red deer or a sambar deer or something like that. So something the equivalent of a mule deer or something in the States, or a wapiti or something like that. That's the kind of size range that would keep a fully grown adult male tiger happy. It's relatively less dangerous to catch one of those than it is to catch a gaur. But if the tiger, tigers do catch gaur. It's not that common, but if they can, they will. It's certainly something that mostly adult tigers do. Young tigers wouldn't even dream of trying. And the gaur population is like the tiger population. In some places it's doing okay, especially where you have nice grassland areas mixed in with forest and the habitat is well managed. And in other areas, they're not doing that well. But on the whole, the gaur population is doing okay, I would say.
All right. Let's bring Mrs. Phelps back in for a final question.
Oh, hi. I have a question about, sorry, I just need to check the chat in my classroom. Do tigers have predators?
Young tigers certainly do. When they're first born, and if any other big predator species don't like each other. Tigers, for example, if they come across a leopard, will try and kill it. Leopards, if they come across baby tigers, will try and kill it. The reason is because they compete with each other all the time for different prey species. So as a result, yes, baby species of anything have predators. Adult tigers, the most dangerous things to adult tigers are humans and other tigers. So if a male is defending its territory and another male wants that territory because it's got more prey or more females to breed with, then there might be a fight which then ends up with one of the tigers getting killed. Tigers often get run over on roads or are hit by trains as well, quite a lot. But in terms of actual, does anything hunt adult tigers to eat them? No, not really.
Okay. And then we'll bring Mr. Dunn's crew in one more time.
All right. One of the questions I had was how supportive, like you said, there's they can face fines or jail time for killing the tigers. Has there been any efforts put towards educating locals, like farmers and stuff? Because obviously they don't make a lot of money, but by killing a tiger, they might make a lot more. So have any efforts been put into kind of recruiting the help or educating locals?
Yes. As I explained earlier in my talk as well, 1/3 of all of our projects have one very important component, and that is working with local people. That's to provide them with alternative livelihoods, alternative trades, alternative money, but also it's an education and awareness campaign. It deals with things like why we need tigers, why they're important for ecosystem health. A lot of these people rely on ecotourism in order to make a living, and having a healthy tiger population is an amazing draw for tourists. So that's one side of the coin. The next important thing I would say is local people often don't want to kill tigers. Tigers are spiritually important animals. So the vast majority of people don't actually want to kill tigers. In places like Bhutan, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, they're actually sacred animals. So spiritually, the people are against killing tigers. The third thing I would say is, yes, if you catch one tiger and you get fined, if you catch one tiger and you manage to sell it or sell the body parts or the skin or whatever, you can make quite a bit of money. But the risk is very large and it's very unpredictable. And the sheer rules of economics is it makes more sense for people to have steady jobs and incomes from strong agriculture and ecotourisms and other trades than it is to do poaching, which is very risky. You will get fined and you will get caught. There's always that chance, and you will probably end up in prison if you are caught and red-handed with tigers and tiger parts. So it's a big risk to take. So people don't actually want to do it.
Okay, and we're going to grab one more question from YouTube before we wrap up today. A few groups are wondering, there's human conflict with the tigers. So why do we work so hard to protect them? So you've talked about the ecotourism, you've talked about the spiritual connection. Can you talk a little bit about the role in the ecosystem the tigers play? Yeah,
so there's multiple roles in the ecosystem that the tigers play. First of all, if you have an apex predator like a tiger that's healthy and doing its job, it maintains the prey population to a certain level. So you don't get too many deer, you don't get one species that dominates. And if you don't have too many deer, if you have just the right amount of deer, some trees can produce seeds which will then grow. If you have too many deer, then basically the deer will eat everything. They will remove all of the young trees, all the young seedlings, and the forest will not regenerate. So that's, first of all, a very critical thing. Tigers maintain balance with prey and vegetation. The second thing is tigers also maintain balance with other predators. So if you didn't have tigers, as I said, predators kill each other. Tigers compete with and kill other predators like jackals and foxes and things like that. When they do that, it means that the smaller predators are balanced, are kept in balance. If this was not the case, if tigers didn't do that job, there'd be too many foxes, jackals, etc., etc. You would have a completely different kind of ecosystem. Sometimes jackals and foxes their populations change very quickly. you can have spread of other diseases like rabies, forest diseases that we talked about, zoonoses, like not coronavirus, but other kinds of wildlife diseases would spread through the carnivore population. The third job that the tiger does is by doing all of this, by maintaining the balance of prey species, of deer species, and vegetation, you end up with a healthy forest. And what a healthy forest does is it stores carbon dioxide. So it means that there's less carbon dioxide in the environment, which means in the air, in the atmosphere, so you get less chance of global warming, climate change. But it also helps to maintain a balance of water cycling in the environment. So a healthy forest is often associated with healthy rivers. The water doesn't just land on the ground and run straight off into the river down to the sea. It's stored for a little while in the soil. It's stored for a while in the underground water systems, in the tree roots, etc. So as a result, you have a good balanced management, a good storage, if you like, of clean water, which means that basically forests are often called water catchment areas or watersheds. Basically, it means when it rains, the rain doesn't get just drain off straight away. It's stored for a while and does useful things like provide water for people more slowly than in one big flood. So it does a multiple number of jobs in the ecosystem. I hope that answers your question.
No, absolutely. That really highlights, every species in an ecosystem is important. We may not always see those roles, but everything's there for a reason, and everything plays a part, even if it's just being prey for something else. Everything in an ecosystem has a role. I want to start off with a big shout out to our YouTube crew today. Very active today. Lots of great questions coming in. Big shout out to our camera classrooms today, joining us in Canada and the US. Thank you for those great questions. And Sugoto, thank you so much for representing the biggest of the big cats and sharing the incredible work that you're doing with them. And obviously all the people that you work with, a big shout out to them as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, everyone.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off for today. Big thank you for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you in another event. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.